What if madness is not a sickness, but a form of clarity? What if those we call insane have simply wandered too far into the depths of truth, where most people refuse to go? From Nietzsche's trembling hand scrawling, "I am not a man, I am dynamite," to Artaud screaming that the theater must become a plague, madness has long haunted the margins of philosophy. But perhaps that madness is not a failure of reason, but its final, terrifying evolution. We live in a world obsessed with control. Everything must be diagnosed, explained, medicated. But there are places inside the human psyche that resist such control. Nietzsche called it the abyss. Artaud called it the body without organs. Both men dove into this chaos willingly. Both returned, if at all, forever transformed. Let's begin with Nietzsche, the philosopher of the hammer, a man who dared to declare God dead, not with triumph, but with trembling. He didn't say it with glee, but with dread. Because if God is dead, then all meaning trembles, all order shivers, all structure collapses. Without the divine to anchor our morality, what remains? Nietzsche stared into that emptiness and didn't look away. He called it nihilism, the realization that life has no inherent meaning. And yet, he didn't collapse under the weight of that thought. He built something new from it. Der Übermensch, eternal recurrence, the will to power, ideas born not in comfort, but in confrontation with the void. But here's what they don't often tell you. Nietzsche went mad. At the age of 44, he collapsed in the streets of Turin, clutching a horse that had been beaten by its master. He wept, embraced the animal, and never truly returned. For the next 11 years, he lived in a state of silence, rambling letters, and psychological disintegration. Was this the price of staring too deeply into the abyss? Or was it the inevitable consequence of a mind that refused to lie to itself? Nietzsche didn't go mad because he lost his reason. He went mad because he took reason to its end. He asked the questions no one dared. He stripped away illusion after illusion until only raw existence remained. Can a mind survive that? Or does it shatter under the weight? Now, enter Antonin Artaud, a French playwright, poet, visionary, or madman, depending on whom you ask. Artaud believed that modern society had sterilized experience, that we lived in a prison of language, trapped by categories, suffocated by the rational. He didn't want to entertain people. He wanted to burn them. He wanted theater that could boil the blood, terrorize the soul, rip apart the false self. He said, "We must liberate life from its fixed forms." For Artaud, madness was not a defect, it was a rebellion. He spent years in and out of asylums, electroshock therapy, institutionalization, pain, and yet, his writings grew more intense, more primal. He spoke of a cosmic cruelty, of a theater that could awaken us to the horror and beauty of raw being. He said language had betrayed us. That thought itself was a kind of disease. Think about that. What if our very capacity for rationality, for language, is the thing that imprisons us? What if true freedom means escaping even thought itself? Artaud believed we needed to go through a kind of metaphysical fire, to break open the body, to destroy the ego, to die symbolically, so we could finally live. He was not playing with madness. He was trying to use it as a key, a way out, a sacred wound. Both Nietzsche and Artaud saw madness not as a collapse, but as confrontation, a reckoning with truth so brutal, so unfiltered, that it scorched the mind. Madness, in this view, is a kind of inner apocalypse, a shattering of the false self. But this raises a dangerous question. Are the mad the ones who have lost touch with reality, or are they the ones who have seen it too clearly? Look at society. Look at its norms. The endless repetition of roles, the masks we wear, the rituals of politeness, productivity, and obedience. Is this sanity? Or is this a collective dream we call normal? Nietzsche once said that those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. Maybe madness is hearing that music. Maybe it's the price we pay for glimpsing something too raw, too real. There's a concept in psychology called positive disintegration, developed by Kazimierz Dabrowski. It's the idea that certain kinds of inner breakdowns, anxiety, depression, existential crisis, are not signs of illness, but signs of growth. The self, breaking down to be rebuilt. Nietzsche lived this. Artaud embodied it. Their madness was not decay, it was a metamorphosis, a sacred destruction. Of course, there is real suffering in madness. Delusion, isolation, terror. This isn't a romantic fairy tale. But what if that suffering is not simply a malfunction, but a message, a threshold, a calling to something deeper? Nietzsche wrote of the Dionysian, a force of chaos, ecstasy, and destruction. He contrasted it with the Apollonian, the force of order, beauty, and logic. Modern society, he argued, is obsessed with the Apollonian. We fear the Dionysian because it dissolves boundaries. But art, truth, even life itself, require both. Artaud's theater was pure Dionysus. Screaming, writhing, madness on stage. A direct assault on the polite illusions of Western rationality. He wanted us to feel again, not just think, to be shaken, cracked open. And isn't that what philosophy originally was? Not academic hair-splitting, but a way of life, a confrontation with death, meaning, being. In that sense, Nietzsche and Artaud were not insane, they were prophets. Prophets whose visions were too much for a society addicted to comfort. There is a terrible honesty in madness. No filters, no performance, just raw, unmediated experience. Artaud once wrote, "I am not a man. I am Artaud." A declaration of becoming, of refusing to fit the mold, of breaking the self open and letting the universe scream through the cracks. Nietzsche, in his last sane years, wrote to a friend, "You must be proud of your madness." As if madness, properly understood, is not shameful, but divine. Maybe madness is not the end of reason, but its dark twin, the place it arrives when it dares to follow truth into the unknown. Maybe the mind is not broken in madness. Maybe it is finally free. But freedom is terrifying. It costs everything. Your identity, your certainty, your place in the world. Most people choose the cage. And maybe that's wise. But a few, Nietzsche, Artaud, others unnamed, choose the fire. They let themselves burn. And what emerges from that fire is not a normal human being, but something else entirely. Something raw, something radiant, something that doesn't fit the world's categories. And maybe that's the point. But what if the fire doesn't end? What if you don't return? That's the true terror of madness. It's not just a journey into the depths. It's the possibility that the depths might become your new reality. That the structure of self you once trusted, your thoughts, your identity, your name, might dissolve and never come back. Nietzsche never returned. The final decade of his life was spent in silence, in shadows, in whispers. His eyes, once filled with fire, now empty. But his ideas, those survived. They burned their way into the fabric of modern thought. He never saw it, but his madness became myth. His collapse became a mirror. Artaud's descent was different. He screamed all the way down. Even within institutions, even after being stripped of his tools, his friends, and often his sanity, he continued to create. His later writings are like fragments of a sacred language, broken, blazing, bewildering. He didn't just fall apart. He became something else entirely. And here's where the paradox lives. Society views madness as a problem to be solved. But philosophy, at its core, is about questions that don't have solutions. It's about the tension, the ambiguity, the mystery. Madness, when viewed philosophically, is not a disease. It's a question. It asks, what is real? What is self? What happens when the frameworks collapse? There's a line from Artaud that echoes this perfectly. No one has ever written or painted, sculpted, modeled, built, or invented except literally to get out of hell. He saw creativity not as self-expression, but as exorcism. And hell, for him, was the cage of rational thought. The cage of I am this, I am that. He wanted to destroy the labels, to undo the grammar of identity, to return to a more primal state, a sacred chaos. Nietzsche, too, was performing a kind of exorcism. His philosophy wasn't written from a podium, it was forged in agony. Toothaches, migraines, isolation, rejection. His books were messages in bottles thrown from the edge of the abyss. And still, both men kept writing until they no longer could. Not because they wanted fame, but because they were possessed by something larger. Madness wasn't their downfall, it was their medium. But this leads us to a dangerous realization. If madness and genius are so closely linked, where do we draw the line? History is full of mad prophets. From Socrates to Kierkegaard, from Rimbaud to Van Gogh. The people who saw the world differently, who lived on the fringes of thought, who shattered convention. Many of them suffered immensely, but they also illuminated things no one else could see. It's not about glorifying mental illness. That would be cruel. Real madness can destroy lives, relationships, and bodies. But it's also true that the edges of consciousness, the places we're taught to fear, are often where transformation begins. Carl Jung once said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." That inferno, what is it if not madness? Jung himself had what he called a confrontation with the unconscious, during which he wrote the Red Book, a vast, mystical, almost hallucinatory exploration of symbols, visions, archetypes. He didn't call it madness, but it was close. He chose to descend voluntarily, to explore, not suppress. Maybe that's the difference. Madness that consumes versus madness that transforms. One drowns, the other baptizes. Nietzsche and Artaud both danced on that razor's edge. And perhaps they fell, yes. But they also opened doors that never closed again. They forced us to confront the most uncomfortable question of all: what lies beneath the mask of sanity? Because let's be honest, normalcy is a performance, a ritual. We agree, silently, to play by the rules of thought, behavior, and belief. But under the surface, there's chaos, desire, fear, rage, wonder. Madness isn't over there in some asylum. It's here, in us, all the time. We suppress it, with routines, with small talk, with medication, with denial. But it never goes away. Nietzsche called this the will to power, the deep, surging force within us that wants to become, to create, to destroy, to transcend. Artaud called it the plague, something that infects the soul and burns away the false self. Either way, it's not polite. It's not quiet. It's not safe. But it's real. And maybe that's the point. Madness, in the philosophical sense, is not about losing touch with reality. It's about losing touch with consensus reality. The version of life we've all agreed to pretend is solid. But what if that consensus is the true illusion? What if the mad are not those who've lost reality, but those who've touched a deeper one? This is why Nietzsche's work feels alive even today. Why Artaud's screams still echo through art, theater, and rebellion. They were not offering answers. They were offering ruptures, cracks in the world. And once you see through a crack, once you glimpse the chaos beneath the surface, everything changes. Forever. There's no going back. But maybe that's not a tragedy. Maybe that's a gift. To be broken by truth is still to be in relationship with truth. To fall apart is still a form of honesty. And sometimes, that honesty is the beginning of something new. A self reborn not in perfection, but in fire. So what does all of this mean for you? It means that your breakdowns, your darkest nights, your spirals, they are not proof that you're defective. There may be signs that you are waking up, that your old self is dying, and something truer is trying to be born. It means that when you feel like you're losing your mind, you might be getting closer to your soul. And it means that philosophy is not just for ivory towers. It's for the trenches, the hospitals, the sleepless nights, the places where thought meets agony. Nietzsche said, "One must have chaos within to give birth to a dancing star." Artaud lived in that chaos. He was the dancing star, on fire, fractured, luminous. Neither hero nor victim, but something else entirely. A mirror, a warning, a torch. So ask yourself, Are you willing to confront the parts of you that society says are insane? Are you brave enough to listen to the voices that don't speak in words? Because that's where the truth hides. In the scream. In the silence after the scream. In the parts of you that refuse to behave. This isn't a call to lose your mind. It's a call to reclaim it. To own every piece of it. Even the wild ones. Especially the wild ones. So tell me, what do you think? Is madness a curse? A gift? A doorway? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from the ones who've walked through the fire. And if this resonated with you, if it made you think, feel, remember something deep and hidden, don't leave quietly. Like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Because in a world that wants you numb, silent, and obedient, your voice, your madness, and your light matter more than ever.